I always look forward to the Big Ten SEC battles in Florida. You've got the Outback, the Capital One, and that's now the Citrus, I believe, again, and the Gator Tax Slayer Bowl as well. So let's focus in on Florida and Michigan. They will meet for a third time in about 10 years on New Year's Day. Let's bring in David Waters to help us break down the Wolverines and the Gators. David, it's always a pleasure. Let's talk about your favorite player, Treon Harris. Let's start with Treon Harris against this Michigan defense. So the Wolverines, they threw 3 consecutive shutouts. They were so much improved on defense this year. And they were actually really good despite only winning 5 games before that. So it was the offense that didn't get anything done in 2014. So it's a really good Michigan defense, top 4 in the nation in scoring and total yardage. Treon Harris is going to have to, they're going to have to find ways for him to make plays, I guess, on the perimeter.
Going to have to be, I mean, there's really nothing to lose now. There's no playoff chance. There's no, SEC championship games over with. Let him use his legs. That's what he's going to be best at. And, looking at Michigan's secondary, and what they can do, they're holding opponents to 48% of completion percentage against them with only allowing 7 touchdowns all year. So that's not an ideal situation for Treon Harris to really, now just come alive and start throwing the ball over the field. That's not going to happen. We've seen enough against good defenses what, Treon's capabilities are, and it's, not much throwing the ball. So, there's really nothing left to lose. And, Treon Harris is not really going to be probably the quarterback at Florida next year either. So, you're not really taking an injury situation where you're, worried about what may happen if he gets injured as far as the quarterback position goes. So, it would just be probably best suited for the offense, to let him, one game's probably not going to hurt, and you have some weeks now to prepare and get something installed to where he probably feels more comfortable. So like you said, roll him out, use the perimeter a little bit more. I would expect Michigan to spy him a lot like the last, couple of teams have done, and, try and keep him in the pocket a little bit. So, but maybe, with these weeks, they can develop something to help use Treon's legs a little bit more and maybe get something going in the passing game just a little bit to help him out.
Yeah, Jeremy Clark picked off 3 passes, and Jordan Lewis, who's one of the better cover corners in the Big Ten, he picked off 2. He's really good on the outside. Kelvin Taylor could have the opportunity, even though Michigan is really stout on defense. The linebacking core is good. It's not extremely fast and athletic. They're just solid guys led by Desmond Morgan, and the defensive line was really stout this year, but it's a little bit banged up. I think Kelvin Taylor might have an opportunity here. Jordan Howard, Indiana, so we're talking Indiana talent up front offensively, but he's a really good back. He tore them to shreds, and Ezekiel Elliott had a field day in that rivalry game to close out the season. So they did give up some rushing yardage in spots.
That's pretty much what we're going to have to be the focus of the Florida offense, is to try and get Kelvin Taylor going. Some rumblings, we haven't really heard. There's nothing, nobody's really confirmed. This could be Kelvin Taylor's last game as a Gator. He could declare for the draft if he wants to. He would be going out on a good season. And Florida's bringing in a lot of depth, running back depth next year. So he probably, he could make the jump. So this would be his swan song. And I remember his dad going out against Penn State in his final game. So, can he recreate some of the, that magic of his dad and, maybe going, recreating that a little bit and, putting it to a Big Ten team in a bowl game. But it's going to be interesting, if he is declaring, do the coaches know? Do they try and get some of the younger backs some more carries, to see what they can do, as far as Jordan Scarlett and Jordan Cronkite? But you're right, it's going to have to be the run game that gets going. And, of course, if the run game gets going, that's what's going to help Treon more than anything. So, Kelvin Taylor would be nice to see him if he does declare, for him to, to go out on top. And, he's been – a good Gator. We all remember the big blow up of him and Michael Lane early in the season. But it would be nice, if Kelvin Taylor, if we pretty much moved on from that, and that has been erased pretty much. But after that, it would be nice to for his final game, if it is, to go out and be a great Gator running back as far as what he did, in some SEC games and specifically the Georgia games the last couple of years.
And for those people who haven't seen much Michigan football, again, the linebackers are very stout and not very athletic, but Joe Bolden led the team in tackles with 76. Desmond Morgan's been around there in Ann Arbor forever, had 67 tackles. Chris Wormley's really the playmaker along the defensive front, 12 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks on the defensive end outside linebacker spot. They got a kid, Jabril Peppers, who you will see all over the place. He's kind of a Charles Woodson, returns kickoffs, punts, plays a little wide receiver, caught 8 passes, will run the football out of the jet sweeps, but his number one job is to play corner and safety. They even move him around in regards to coverage, so he's an elite athlete for Michigan. Well, when Michigan, you would think under Jim Harbaugh, runs it well, and that's what they tried to do, was reestablish the run, and kind of like the rush defense, they ran it really well early in the season, but then they relied a little bit more on Jake Rudock, and it's, I think, the most talent on the field. And the interesting matchup, David, is going to be the Florida secondary against these Michigan wide receivers who are really good. Amara Darboh and J. Hugh Chesson in particular. Jake Butt, the tight end, one of the best in the business as well.
And leading off with Butt, I think that's probably going to be the matchup that Michigan probably needs to exploit against Florida. Like you said, the defensive line for Florida is pretty stout. Running yards may not be there. But I really think, Florida's linebackers are probably really going to have trouble covering Butt. And I think that would probably be, part of the game the Michigan offense can probably exploit. That's probably one weakness of this Gator defense. Not many teams could actually do it because, Florida didn't really face that many tight ends this year that could really, stretch the field and exploit them. But Antonio Morrison, for as good as he is at tackling and stopping the run, he's very so-so in coverage. And Jared Davis may not be big enough. It's hard to say that about a linebacker, but may not be big enough to cover and stay with Butt. So you may see Keon O'Neal, some of the safeties come up and play him a little bit. But you're right. When you I think some players for Michigan receivers may be there just a little bit. Michigan doesn't have the running backs we used to see Florida playing, against with Derrick Henry and Leonard Fournette and Dalvin Cook. So they're probably going to rely on the passing game a little bit more. And they're big, we've seen this Gator secondary, for as good as they are, give up some really big plays. And that's because, they play, so close up to the line and press coverage. And if you can get behind it, there are some plays to be made if you want to go up and go get the ball. And we've seen Michigan guys do that this year with Rudock and company there. So there's really going to be, I think, that really is going to be the key there. If what does Butt do against the Florida linebackers in coverage? And can Florida stop the big play in the passing game?
Yeah, you're right about the Michigan ground attack. For as much as Harbaugh would love to slam it between the tackles, and that's what they did early in the season, Devion Smith, he's certainly willing. This kid will run about as hard as anybody you see, but he's not a dynamic runner. He's good, but he's just a capable between the tackles guy. Averages 4.2 per carry, so they're not great at running the ball. They got Ty Isaac. He came in from USC transfer, and Drake Johnson, kind of their change of back guys that will carry it 4 or 5 times. But really, it was Jake Rudock who they, after only throwing him 15, 18 passes per game, he was the guy that carried it down the stretch, threw 6 touchdowns against Indiana, and he was starting to zing it around the field 35 and 40 times. Not necessarily what Michigan wants to do, but that's probably their best chance of winning what I expect to be a really close game.
Right. It's going to be a defensive struggle, more than likely. Both defenses are definitely above average. I would say the Michigan offense right now definitely better than the Florida offense led by Treon Harris. But the probably the biggest thing as far as just off the radar, if you're going just not strictly away from game plan stuff or turnovers right now, Michigan is -6 in the year, which is that's pretty bad, going up against a Florida team who was +10 in the turnover margin. So turnovers could be, a big factor in this game. But Florida has struggled late in the year getting the turnovers. Against FSU and Alabama, not that many turnovers to help the offense out and get them in good field position. So as long as Michigan takes care of the ball, it's definitely going to be a close game. If both teams take care of the ball, it's probably going to be that defensive struggle we imagine seeing. And another thing, you mentioned him earlier, Jabril Peppers, how they match him up and if they can bring him on the offensive side of the ball. This being a defensive struggle, I do see Michigan probably, try and find, they have a couple weeks to prepare, maybe trying to find ways to get him the ball more and let a big play happen against this Florida defense. There's probably not going to be many plays there to be made. So get one of your best playmakers on the field and see if he can make something happen.
Yeah, it's a power matchup. They're not at their best right now, but we would expect these two programs with the head coaches they have in place They have some great talent in spots, and we would expect this to be the beginning of big things for both programs in getting back to the elite of college football. So it's Michigan, it's Florida. As we mentioned, they played twice in the last 10 years, with Michigan winning over Tebow and company in 07 and about 03 Outback Bowl as well, if memory serves me well. So, David, anything else to cover in this one? I'm guessing that the Gators, with about a month to prepare, maybe they can work on the field goal kicking.
Work on it, yes. Does it get any better? Probably not.
They may need that. We could be looking at 14-13 in the fourth quarter, something like that.
I mean, you're right, and like I said, we do expect a defensive struggle, so points are going to be at a premium. Can Florida get anything? I think Harden's missed his last 5 chances field goals since probably hitting the game winner against Vandy. So I have to go back and look if he's made any since then. I know he's 0 for his last 5, but I can't remember if he's hit any since then. So it's pretty bit of a struggle there. Florida, has an early enrollee. Is there any way they can get him on the field? That's a joke running right now, but it's going to be interesting. These two teams also play each other the first game of 2017 in Dallas and Arlington. So this is a nice little bit of preview as far as coaching goes. Talent is definitely going to be a lot different when that game rolls around. But it's a neat little preview to see what the gyms can do against each other.
So we got let's see, Florida at 10-3, Michigan at 9-3, Outback Bowl on Jan 1. David, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Mark.